All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is David Freese. I'm the mayor of Tonganoxie, and I'm calling to order this August 21st, 2023 regular meeting of the Tonganoxie City Council. Ms. Huntington, would you note that I am present and call the roll, please?
Yes, Mayor. Mr. Partridge?
Here.
Ms. McCutcheon is absent. Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Mr. Donnelly?
Here.
Mr. Dale?
Here.
Thank you. Would you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Item 2 on our agenda is the approval of minutes, where we review the minutes from the August 7th meeting. Are there any questions, conversation, or a motion regarding the minutes?
I'll move to accept as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Partridge. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item 3 on the agenda is the consent agenda, in which we review the bill payments for the previous period. Are there any questions, conversation, or a motion for the consent agenda? Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Partridge. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. During old business, item number 4 on the agenda is when we ask for the public comment. Mr. Porter, did anyone sign up before the deadline? All right, thank you very much. Onward to new business. Item A is review of the site plan and application of development of a dog park by the Tonganoxie Recreation Commission. It's my understanding that we are missing a valuable party of that, and we'll move that down the agenda towards the end. Item B is the presentation of regional transportation plan update. Mr. Brakovich.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. We've got Jeff with Kimley Horn here. Kimley Horn was contracted by the county to complete the study. I think you've been getting periodic updates on this. It goes back to, I believe, 2021 when the RFP was issued or eventually reissued, and Kimley Horn was chosen for it. And there's been a series of committees and subcommittee meetings, as well as meetings scattered throughout the county, including your participation in a target group discussion that we had here in this building some months ago. So from all of that input, Jeff and his team have put together a project summary to kind of tell where they're at. And Jeff, I guess as I transition this back to you, I think it would be good to hear from your standpoint now, as well as where the project began, what you considered the intent of the work to be and how that leads into what you're presenting here tonight. So, Jeff, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Jeff McCarroll with Kimley Horn. Pleased to be back in front of you. It's been a few months since last year. Had a great introduction, I think, in the summary for this. This has been a project a little over a year since we started this, to really begin to take a focus and look at how can the communities in Musselwhite County best position themselves to pursue funding from other sources, be it Kansas DOT, be it the Midwest Regional Council, or even competitive grants through the US DOT. That's really a big process. We spoke last time about how important it is that communities actually work together to advocate for those projects, because as we come together as a group and speak with multiple entities talking about a project, the project's going to score higher, and that makes the likelihood of achieving a project that much more. So it's been a pleasure to work with your professional staff as well as that of the other communities to try to work through some of these issues and talk about some of the projects where we are today. So this evening we'll kind of hit a quick recap of the project, where dig into details about individual projects as you see fit. We won't go through them all this evening. As a refresher, as we started this process, we really took a look at two paths to begin with. On one side, we tried to define the projects. So we could take a look at 20-some years of different planning processes and ideas that have been out there and start to accumulate those into one list. While we're doing that, we also want to take a look at how we would evaluate those projects, how we could measurably evaluate them based on different criteria that we heard from the community, criteria that we see reflected from KDOT, Mid-America Regional Council, and the USDOT. And every one of those groups has a different lens in which they view projects and ranks them differently. Once we were able to get through those processes, then we actually started to evaluate the process, listen to another round of engagement with people. Where we are today is this final presentation for your consideration. Recap on the key stakeholders. We met virtually in the fall of 2022 as well as the spring of 2023. Around a half a dozen or so different meetings of small groups talking about different issues that we had. We had 2 rounds of public meetings. In the fall, we actually had 2 in-person meetings, different locations here in the county. We also had a virtual online meeting through that. And this spring, we had another round of online meetings where people were able to look at the information we had and feedback to them. And then we've had several elected officials briefings. Late spring, I was here in front of you, and we were talking about some of the issues and how we evaluated the criteria. And then the late summer here, we're taking these final briefings. We started with a number of projects. To begin with, what we identified, these were projects that were based on previous studies. Were shared with the public. We got a lot of comments late last year on these projects. Some of these had overlapping corridors. And really, as we started to evaluate that, that brought us to a list of 43 projects to evaluate throughout the county, totaling about $1.5 billion in construction. So more than a city, more than a county can really proceed of their own. You start to understand the importance for some of these major projects and looking for other funding sources to help with them. Spent a lot of time last time going through how we prioritize projects. We talked about traffic operations and safety, access to amenities, access to economic development, job access, equity, sustainability, and then how we would weight those. What did we hear from the public that they thought was important? Develop a tool that allows you to actually put in your own priorities. So, for example, if you want to say, I want to find where's the project that moves the needle the most on safety, you can look at that versus economic development. But then we also calculated what some of those other committees would do. Because while your values are important, the people who are bringing the other money, they see things differently, and their values are important to understand as well. So that if you put forward a project, you want to be sure it's one that will score the best from those funding categories. So with that, we had Mid-America Regional Council. You can see what they prioritize as well as the KDOT and USDOT. That leads you to this tool, this submit that in the project development pipeline that they will have to serve as a matching fund for a raised grant, which takes us to the USDOT competitive grants. The projects, one of the major projects that links there would be that Eastern Gateway. Through the raised grant, they have a planning study. This is for large projects that smaller communities can't afford to do on their own to figure out what's the right alignment, what are the impacts to the project. This enables them to go forward and fund the grant application for that and to see what the merits are of that project moving forward. The caveat with that, though, is that that will require support of that project from KDOT, from MoDOT staff as well, so we're dealing with the new Missouri River crossing. And it's also going to take support from your U.S. representatives and your U.S. senators to go after that application. There's another round of federal grants that are out there called Safe Streets for All. They're an action plan. Two of the partners on this project actually submitted on this last year into awarded projects, Leavenworth and Leavenworth County. It is a project that we are also eligible to submit for, that the city of Tonganoxie would encourage that. The call for those projects will come next year. In the past 2 years, KDOT's actually provided a portion of the matching funds for the city, so they might be able to get a $100,000 study instead of a $20,000 match, just a $5,000 or $10,000 match for that. Once you go through that process with the safety action plan, then that opens you up for additional dollars from the federal government directly, not flowing through Mid-America Regional Council or KDOT, but directly from USDOT for some safety improvements that you might identify those. Mid-America Regional Council distributes a lot of funding as well. This is flow through from the federal government. Service transportation block grants. The projects that bring the highest there include the K-5 improvements, 158th and 155th Street corridor, which provides basically a parallel north-south route to 37, linking Basehor and Lansing and Leavenworth. Parallel road complete streets, enhancements and upgrades to the Tonganoxie Eisenhower corridors, so connecting Tonganoxie to the north and to some of the other communities. And then continued response of some transit service being provided in Leavenworth and Lansing. Do want to note, KDOT has a number of other programs as well, but these are really the ones we're focusing on for these bigger projects. The Mid-America Regional Council also has a program you may have heard of called the PSP, or the Planning Sustainable Places. What came out of this project, one of the things that came out of this was a combination of projects to develop that north-south corridor for 158th Street up to 20th Street in Leavenworth. What's a great project and opportunity to consider going after a Planning Sustainable Places grant, which helps to put a little bit more definition to that, to set that vision between different communities on how you can move forward. Will also position you better for competitive grants as you move forward. The other recommendation coming out of that PSP program was to look at the Kansas River crossing study, to look at upgrades to cross the Kansas River, be it on the western side here, south of Tonganoxie, eastern side from Basehor, providing that access, better access across the Kansas River, the K-10 corridor, and what's happening in DeSoto and that area. So in conclusion, this project really has brought in extensive public stakeholder and elected officials outreaches. We've identified more than 43 projects for consideration. The projects were evaluated based on defined metrics, aligning with scoring criteria for the funding sources, as well as what we've learned through our outreach efforts. The strength this gives is your ability to speak with one voice when you advocate for a project. It brings a lot of strength and takes a lot of consideration through the different positions when you have a multi-jurisdictional approach. That's going to come to importance here in October. KDOT will have their local consult meetings held on October 17th in New Mexico for this area. It's an opportunity for you all to come with
Well, thank you and appreciate the work that you did. Council, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I sure do. I want to make sure that I say thank you. First of all, it was a great opportunity to work with you and work through all this. And a lot of these are very familiar from a long, long time ago. And Greg, thanks for attending. It has been important for all of us, at least from the Port Authority perspective, is what I chair, to make sure that we try to present something that everybody in the county, all the cities can get together and sign off on, and that's really, and you just said that, it's really important. As I look down the action items and different programs, how does that Eastern Gateway with MoDOT in Missouri, if we all show up with a letter for all these other projects at Leavenworth and Lansing and Facer and Tonganoxie and Leavenworth, we've all signed off on it, and this one has MoDOT in it, are they going to sign off? Are they going to be supportive, or do we show up with that? And then where I'm going to is, if we don't get that, is that a gap? Is that leaving a gap in our 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever that number is of presentations where everybody signs off and all the arrows are pointing correctly, except for this one that has an arrow that's just waiting? Are they going to sign off to point for support?
I don't, so won't speak on behalf of the Missouri Highway Commission, but what I can say, and this is, in all candor, both from Missouri and Kansas DOT perspectives, they both are investing a lot in the Centennial Bridge, and with all the needs that they have right now, I don't think that there's going to be a lot of support from the DOTs at this point in time for that project.
Will that hurt the other ones if we don't have the same level of kumbaya for all that, for whatever?
No, there won't be that judgment. Many people submit multiple projects, and that's what we encourage you to do. Because while we can estimate based on what we've heard today from what priorities are, things may change. Every governmental entity changes their priorities a little bit every year, and that could change a few
Re-election.
things. So your opportunity to go forward with multiple projects gives you a strong position to try to get 1 or 2 of those projects. That's some of the goals there.
It doesn't, you don't think it becomes a distraction?
No, sir.
What feedback have you had from MoDOT on that? It's just a great question, Chris. We're all in over here on our side, and they're not on their side. And yeah,
So
what's the input you've received?
So we did have a chance to speak with some staff members at MoDOT, and I would say it relates very much to what we've told you, that that's not their priority right now. And I would say KDOT staff held that same view also.
Well, the overall plan, I mean, it really, if you look at it in the big picture, not necessarily get worried about a specific road, and you look at for all the wide lanes, not the road, it moves traffic around, and it really seems to me the improvement to I-70, get better improvement to I-70. That's really important, I think, in the long term. And it improves that, moving traffic north and south from the north part, it improves that. I hope all the rest of the people who throw money at this see it the same way I do, but I've seen a lot of it for a long time the same way. And with what's going on in this part of the metro, where it's good growth and good business with the new plant down in DeSoto.
And Councilmember, actually, that reminds me of one thing I did want to point out. One of the things that was not included in this list, just so you all recognize, was the interchange, a new interchange at 158 and I-70.
Right.
That being, we were looking at funding sources, largely from federal government or KDOT. Kansas Turnpike Association is different. We can't use federal funds on any of those projects, and a lot of KDOT funds are actually covering
is that tollable? Can you put a toll on that?
That's still part of the turnpike.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's everything,
and
yeah,
so,
from Bonner to Tongi.
The toll used to be out of Bonner, well, it used to be in Kansas City 1,000 years ago.
They're on 18th Street Express.
So it's tollable for a possible funding source. And I think that's another additional access point to I-70 is pretty critical for the county.
Kansas Turnpike had a representative involved in some of our meetings as well, and was a good partner.
Great.
Anything further?
Appreciate you putting it together, and Greg, thanks for running the show for us. I do appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll move back to item A now.
Do we need to do anything on that right yet, George?
There, the county has requested that all the participating partners sign off on a resolution that we're all in support of it. That we anticipate bringing that back before you at a future date. We just wanted you to have the chance to hear the presentation, absorb it. We'll have at least one additional city council meeting before they even meet with the city of Basel, which Jeff, I think is early September, if I remember the calendar right. So I know we'll have a meeting on September 5th. I believe they are coming back to the Port Authority for a presentation as well. So we just, from a staff perspective, we thought it would be better to let everybody hear it, and if there needed to be additional discussion amongst the participating members, that would be a better approach. But we do plan to advance something to you at a future date on that.
And what did you say the time and date, location is of the bigger group meeting? In October, correct?
Yes, I believe it was October 17th. It's in Lenexa, with the local consult. I'd have to look up the time, but I think it's well published.
Okay, I'm sure we can get it from staff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, onward to, back to item A, review of.
Gentlemen?
Yeah, thanks. Review of the site plan application for development of a dog park by the Tonganoxie Recreation Commission. Mr. Brakovich?
Yep, thanks, Mayor. So Brad Eccles with the Tonganoxie Recreation Commission is here, and as he comes up to the podium to give his presentation, I'll recognize Mr. Porter. He's been working closely with them, but this is the culmination of some introductions the city staff was able to make with Gray Construction, who was the lead construction partner for the Hills facility, and the community's desire and what we outlined in the development agreement, an expectation of being a community partner. And one of the early projects that was identified was to attempt to create a dog park somewhere. Brad was gracious enough to say, hey, the Rec Commission had acquired some property. We'd be willing to hear some ideas about it. And, you know, fast forward months later, and not enough credit to anybody that's actually been doing the work here. Here we are tonight to kind of see the culmination of all those efforts. But I'll turn it over to Dan if he's got any other comments. And I think Brad does have a short presentation.
The only thing I'd add is September Planning Commission is the date for consideration of the site plan. So if you have any input or feedback you'd like us to convey to the planning commissioners when they make a decision on approving or suggesting modifications, feel free to give that, and we'll be glad to carry that feedback forward. But I'll let Brad roll through the slides.
Yeah, well, thank you again. Brad Eccles, I'm Recreation Director in Tonganoxie Recreation Commission. This project, just a little backstory on this. We acquired this property a couple springs ago with really it just made too much sense being right next to Chieftain Park, future expansion of the park. This community is growing, it makes sense that the parks are growing. So really no specific plans, just like, hey, let's get this property, makes sense, let's see what happens. A few months later, Hills is coming to us and going, hey, we've partnered with other communities, what can we do with you guys? So this is kind of where this all started. And kind of a little slideshow we put together here. So this is the current site. right across the street. I still call it the old Meadows property, Meadows construction property, northwest of where Todd's Tire is. Right now, it's just kind of always been overgrown and hayed and trees grown up through it. It's 7.62 acres, and again, we purchased it I think two springs ago. One of the challenges with developing this site is floodplain, being right there on the creek. So we've kind of went back to the drawing board a couple times on on our conceptual ideas, conceptual drawings on what would work there. We've had to do some modifications and shrink some things down a little bit so to stay out of those floodways, floodplains. Obviously, you can there's some workarounds on that, but talking with Gray, talking with the city engineers, it sounds like those are pretty, big hurdles to clear to get FEMA to approve things, and a lot of extra costly studies and surveys and all that stuff. So we've kind of changed up a little bit, and here's the drawing, the latest conceptual drawing. It kind of concludes, I can't see this very well, but it kind of concludes a large dog area, a smaller dog area, obviously the parking lot. You kind of see it right in the center. There's a little diamond shape that would be like a little shelter house, little shade covered with picnic tables. The little shaded circles kind of have an idea of like a natural playground, a natural playscape. Maybe not your typical. A lot of people think of a playground, they think slides and swings like this. This would be more of using rocks and logs and kind of hills. I always think of like the legends, you go and the kids are always climbing and running up the hills and all that stuff, and just something where the kids can use your imagination. So parents can come, let their dogs run, let their pets run, let their kids run, and it's a win-win situation for everybody. But we also want to build in, we want this to look, like a park. So a lot of trees and shrubs, shade right there in that middle between the two dog parks is a big area. Concept has a big shaded area to kind of sit and relax and cool down when it's 125 heat index. Again, the parking lot's about 27 spaces, might be a little overkill. You can never have too much parking, right? But so that's something we might review as we move further with actual plans. And the separate dog parks for large dogs, small dogs, the natural playground area, all that stuff I've already kind of covered. But also we want this to be as multi-use as possible. So the playscape, the dog park, if we can incorporate a walking trail around it, and this all might kind of be done in phases. But the walking trail around it, I think, would be tie in great with that trail that goes already right by it, have benches and water fountains and all that good stuff. But here's kind of a picture the Gray drew up for us. Let's get a little better idea. And that area more toward the trees on the left side of the picture, that would be more, we were anticipating that being more dog park, but as the floodplain showed to be more of a problem, it kind of moved. But that can still be mowed and kept nice and just be a green space for you can have picnic tables and have a little picnic and let your dogs run and let the kids play ball out in the green area.
That's great.
And just a few, there's more of the shaded picnic areas between the two parks. And a lot of the amenities inside the dog parks, it kind of depends on, at the end of the day, what's everything's going to cost, how much can we add now, but you can always add stuff later as they go along. Some more possible ideas for the playscape. But I've been very pleased working with the Gray. We've been talking about this for 12 months to 18 months, and it's been kind of like, well, we're really busy right now. We're building hills, and they've come through in the last couple months and really done a lot of work. Really been impressed with what they've done. So that's into my fancy pictures, but I'm excited about it. The dog park is something we've heard from the community in the past that we need a dog park. We're growing. We got a lot of neighborhoods with smaller yards and apartments and duplexes and all that stuff, and there's not a lot of great places. We see they like to use Chieftain Park, and we're like to clean up dog poop in our Chieftain Park. So we're excited about a place to have families to bring their pets and let them run in a controlled environment. So.
That's awesome.
Well, Brad, that's fantastic. We were here with your assistant a few weeks ago, not to go off too much off topic, but you all have been doing just a fantastic job lately. I don't know if it took me leaving the board or what it was, but no, you guys are doing an amazing job with the rec, and I'm really proud of it. It's a great job.
Appreciate it. We're excited about our new space and all the opportunities that's bringing, being able to expand our staff and just offer so much more and more activities and all of it. So we're excited about it.
Council, do you have anything?
I would encourage you not to give up on the space between the two parks, which is all trees, and if you have a vision, it can be beautiful in there.
Mhm.
And I know there are requirements. Being a developer, I understand that you don't mess with stuff that FEMA and the EPA and all get in, but that's some good space. It's a big part of this side of the creek.
Mhm.
And having been on the rec commission when Chieftain Park became part of the rec commission, that space in there can be valuable some way, and it just has to have a vision. And this is cool. I like this. I'm not a dog person at all.
Well,
I mean, but this is cool.
one of the pieces when we first initially set out is how amazing it would be to have a bridge that would take you from that dog park area, connect to that trail, take you right over to where the sand volleyball pit is now, and just really tie those in. That way you're right there next to the restrooms. It wouldn't be that big of a walk to, because we talked about restrooms at this space, but it's costly. And then if you have a bridge, it's right there. It's not that far of a walk. So, and that's something that we've discussed as maybe phase 2, phase 3, but also as we get further and further along with FEMA and stuff like that, it seems further and further away. But yeah, that would be when we started out, that was definitely in our vision, and I can see that area just keep getting cleaned up. And
Well, thank you. That's what I was looking for you to say. You can clean it up, it would be beautiful in
Yeah.
there. And it would just still be exactly like it is, just not falling down trees.
It
and
doesn't have to
crazy
have
vines that grow around, and it could be usable space for people just to sit and.
There doesn't have to be a sidewalk for you to walk along the creek. You can walk along the creek, and if it's cleaned up and maintained, and it can be a nice spot.
I know you still have to go through planning commission and stuff, but what would a rough timeline be, do you think?
That's more of a question for Gray, but I know they've told us all along that they are hoping to be wrapped up out there and moving a lot of their contractors out by early fall.
Okay.
And so they would want to be moving pretty rapidly while most of their contractors.
Do they have an idea how long it would take them once they broke ground?
I do not have it didn't seem like it seems like the scope of their projects, seems like a pretty fun project for them and something that they could hammer out pretty quick.
Okay.
Very cool. Anything else? Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Mr.
Brad.
Thank you guys,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Wouldn't that put us on the map?
We don't have any shared ever. Item C, update on Stone Creek Neighborhood Park side equipment repair.
Yep, thanks, Mayor. Just a quick update on this. This is, well, first I want to thank Councilman Donnelly because I believe on one of his walks, he noticed that there was some damage to the slide, and as staff did further investigation, it did look like the slide had been vandalized. With Mr. Eccles just here, and for those of our residents or anybody that might be listening or watching don't know, is the city's not really responsible for the parks. We have a few small pocket parks that we maintain, but otherwise the Rec Commission maintains the other parks and has the majority responsibility. So when we develop our budgets, we typically are budgeting into our parks enough to replenish the mulch and do some basic maintenance and change out equipment. And so We don't anticipate vandalism, and we surely don't anticipate having to replace such major pieces of equipment. This slide in particular is kind of one of the smaller, shorter slides, but it's a tandem, so it comes out of the structure and has a side-by-side slide. And so we're expediting the repair of that because we know that toddlers and youngsters and the families like to have that park. And so although it is within my budget authority to procure that and replace that equipment, I wanted to bring it to your attention. Again, as we are in the middle of our budget discussions, we'll likely have to tap into general fund dollars. And again, although this isn't a budget killer, it's certainly, I think a lot of people don't always realize that, you know, slides cost over $1,000 to replace. And so, but we're happy to do it, happy to move forward. We believe it's a great amenity for those in the area, especially the neighborhood kids that can walk to that park. So I am recommending to move forward, but did want to bring it to your attention because of the reasons I just stated. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Any questions, council?
I appreciate bringing it up, George. It's just a little bit dangerous, and it is a heavily used park, and it looked to me like somebody decided to blow something up on it. Maybe not, but.
That's unfortunate, but no action item on that? No action on that?
If you want to do a quick motion for approval, just so since it's on the record, but we don't really. I saw a lot of heads nodding.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Move forward. Item D, consider approval of wastewater treatment plant mixer equipment purchase. Mr. Brakovich.
Yep. So thanks, Mayor. So as you all are intimately aware of, we are planning a large expansion project at the wastewater treatment plant. There are pieces of equipment that we've looked at that are used at the plant, but not necessarily part of the expansion components involved here. And so we have a series of mixers that we have one large mixer that's been recently rehabbed and repaired. And then we have a series of 3 smaller mixers, one of which has failed and is it's not repairable. And so we have a quote to purchase that replacement. And these mixers are all kind of at their life expectancy. And so while we have the quote and the supplier is saying there is availability, and we know we have at least 2 others that are of the same age and likely to experience a potential failure that may not be repairable, we wanted to recommend at least purchasing 1 additional mixer and having that kind of shelf ready at the plant in case we have another failure like that. So again, wanted to draw your attention that it's not part of the expansion because it's not directly involved with the components that we need to be expanding. But did also want to say there are pieces, these are the pieces that are at their life expectancy. We shouldn't expect more equipment like this, and that's why we wanted to recommend with purchasing at least 2. Be happy to answer any questions you might have. I think Mr. Heskett left, but.
Any questions, council?
The shelf product, which totally understand, we can't get outdated on it or it doesn't appear that looking at it, you can't tell, but there's probably not a lot of technology to it to where it just plug it into some power and it just does its lovely thing.
Yes, I think just coming out of pandemic and post-pandemic supply issues, we just don't want to get in a position where we're waiting months for a part that we can afford to purchase now.
Yeah, it makes sense, especially if we don't get outdated in technology and we have to throw it away because I think it's pretty basic product.
Yes, and really no plans on updating that particular equipment. This would just be simply an equipment swap out when the time was needed.
Any further questions? If not, I'd accept a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to authorize staff to purchase 2 units of the Davis EMU mixer from C&B Equipment for an amount not to exceed $25,000 $1,858 plus additional freight charges.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Moving to item E, consider approval of fire department extrication equipment purchase. Mr. Brakovich.
Thanks, Mayor. I know Mr. Porter's been working with Chief Zimmelman, and Chief is here tonight. I know he'd be happy to come to the podium and answer any questions you might have. But this is an item we budgeted for, and it is coming in. So as we developed last year's budget for this year, or as we worked last year to develop this year's budget, we had planned to make this purchase. And so Chief is always looking for an advantage in pricing. And so in the past, we had purchased a demo set of cordless or equipment. And so we put in the request with various suppliers that should a demo set become available for purchase, we'd be interested in that. And we budgeted, I believe, about $20,000 for that. And so we had just recently, a supplier had reached out to Chief, said a demo set was available. It's, if not the same set, it's compatible with the other cordless equipment we have, which would give us the ability to donate some of our more antiquated equipment to either other departments or for training purposes, but gives our staff up-to-date equipment that's much easier to use out in the field. As we found out recently with a vehicle accident, a crash on 2440, and vehicles hit on the same roadway, but one leaves the roadway and one's still stuck on the roadway. And so it's nice having that cordless equipment to be able to go attend to both of those separate vehicles. The overall cost savings, Chief, do you remember? So it saves us over $7,000 from buying brand new, and we still get warranties. And I think the proposal to purchase this, is this the same company we bought the other demo set from? Okay. I think those are all the basics, but we'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have about it.
Any questions, council?
Dan, you might clarify. Oh, sorry, Mayor, if you were about to say something. I was just going to ask Mr. Porter to maybe clarify, since it's coming in slightly over the budget that we had developed, to ensure where the funds are going to be available.
So we have two options to address the little less than $3,500 excess above what we planned for in the fire capital fund. If we do it solely out of the fire capital fund, we would just need to add to the motion a verbal expenditure budget authority increase of, I would advise, $3,500. That forecasted year-end balance would still remain about $231,000 in the fire equipment fund. So that $3,500 is not a hugely negative impact on that fund level for that special purpose fund. The other option would be just to direct that the excess $3,500 for this purchase come out of the general fund, which has the capacity and has funds available should we want to proceed that fashion. So those two options are both equally supported by staff. It's really what the council prefers, and we're happy to take either route. Just ask that you add to the motion that budget amendment if it is the direction to go with the fire capital fund.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Are there any questions? If not, anybody would, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Is there a motion?
Well, I would make a motion that we approve the authorized staff to purchase the Metro Pantheon cutter spreader battery and battery charger equipment from Conrad Fire Equipment for an amount not to exceed $23,463.51, with the additional $3,500 plus or minus a few dollars coming from the fire capital fund.
Thank you. It's perfect.
Work. All right. Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Ms. Stevens. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. That takes care of new business. We move on to our agendas, the city manager agenda. Mr. Brakovich.
Thanks, Mayor. We just have that one agenda item, which is the July financial report. So I'll turn that over to Mr. Porter, but I will call the one detailed item here. is we did apply a liquidated damages to the pay app for the water tower, and it was a fairly significant amount to apply. And Dan's got that in great detail in the report. So, and I believe he'll also give a little bit of detail as to how that impacted our reimbursement portion from the EDA grant as well. So, Dan.
So the financial report is not printed at the dais, but we do have it in the packet, so please let us know if you'd like it to be on the screen as well. Would that be helpful to anybody? You can pull it up. Thanks, Lindsay. So the quick synopsis is we're 58% into the year, complete through the end of July 2023. We've collected a little over 2/3 of total revenues budgeted and spent about 59% of total expenditure budgetability across all funds at that point in time. We completed our 2013B, which is our utility GO bond debt for the most part, in July, and then the remainder of our regular principal and interest payments on GO bonds and lease purchase agreements is due to be completed and has been completed actually already in August. So those payments are scheduled, and that will conclude our debt service obligations this fiscal year. The EDA grant proceeds, we're still at 4 total receipts at that rate of 45% of construction costs. So our next EDA grant application for reimbursement will be our 5th. Total grants disbursements to date are just a little more than $1 million. Our ARPA proceeds, we've spent approximately $27,900 of the approximately $737,000, with approximately $740,000 remaining in that ARPA fund. Again, that's been dedicated towards the engineering costs for the wastewater treatment plant expansion, phase 1, and it satisfies almost the entirety of the cost of that contract. Our budget amendments, we've already completed several through June and July, and we'll add to that the slight amendment made tonight to the Fire Capital Fund. And at this point in the year, in the general fund and other major tax levy funds in particular, we don't foresee any need for year-end budget amendments, but we'll keep monitoring that as we go forward. Pages 2 and 3 of the report detail our major funds, revenue and expenditures, and our utility and non-utility capital funds, revenues and expenditures. For the most part, we see steady progression in revenues and expenditures compared to prior year actuals to the end of July. One small outlier is the Water Capital Reserve, which saw a huge amount of revenue increase in 2022, but that was attributable to deposits made for the water booster pump project, which were funded by property sale proceeds from the Dollar General site property that the city sold to that developer. When we look at sales and use tax, for the city sales and use, as well as the city's share of the county sales and use, we have received our 7th monthly remittance on schedule, which we're very glad that the state is back on track of preparing those distributions for the cities by the end of the month each month. We are ahead of budget from last year in both the city sales and the share of the county sales, and we're also ahead of last year's pace in all categories. So that is a continued strong performance and something that frankly just outpaces what we projected at this point last year for this year's budget. Next in the report is the Caldwell Tanks Water Tower Project Financial Tracker. And like George said, we wanted to call your attention tonight to page 5 and page 6 of the financial report. So the 9th pay app that was submitted to the city and reviewed and approved by BG Consultants totaled amount owed to the contractor of just over $116,000. So that would have taken us to the mid 70% mark of completion of the contract. The application of liquidated damages from the preliminary schedule's substantial completion date to the date of the payment of that pay app totaled $86,000. instead of paying Caldwell Tank $116,422, they were instead paid $30,422. We worked with Anna's colleague and Anna to draft a letter that we've included in the financial report for your information that outlines our owner's explanation of approved payment for pay app number 9. And that basically spells out for the contractor the calculation of the liquidated damages, the rationale in very brief sense in terms of aspects of the contract that require substantial completion on or before May 1st, which we all know was not fulfilled in that fashion. When we looked at how this proceeds going forward, essentially the application of liquidated damages decreases the contract amount. So we'll be updating in future reports that total contract value of $3.299 million to reflect the application of those liquidated damages on that overall contract price. So in a nutshell, the way it works is we apply that towards a payment owed and then don't pay that amount and reflect it in this documentation.
Just great.
We're looking ahead at pay app number 10, which is also reflected in the top of the financial tracker. That pay app owed was calculated at $197,600. The additional days elapsed since the last payment, I think, are getting between 15 and 20 days. We'll go back and refine that and prepare a second letter basically outlining additional application of liquidated damages on pay app 10 because the substantial completion still hasn't been reached.
How does that affect what we get from the donation from the state?
From the EDA?
Yeah, EDA.
It does. So our EDA grant spells out about, I think it's about 45.7% of the contract costs we receive in grant award. So as the contract cost goes down with these adjustments, we lose essentially 45% of that decreased
But
amount.
we
in our
can't
total
qualify any other expenses, attorney fees, or they got limited to what we can qualify into that?
construction costs is maybe,
Yeah.
I think, where this one.
Sorry, dogs.
I think there's, always an opportunity to present an amended agreement, but I think it creates a host of other issues for us.
No, I
And-
understand that. I was just wondering I assume they would spell out, because we lost some opportunity and you can go figure all that, but we just can't get that. Okay.
The good news is we don't pay that money in full.
Yeah.
We omit paying it, so that's helpful. So that's an update on that project. It's a lot to explain quickly, so if you have any questions or want to visit about it personally with George or Anna or I, we'd all be glad to help you with that. But it's unfortunate that's the position it's in, but we do have contractual protocols in place that we're exercising, and we hope
Is it going to
that-
work right when they're done? I'm serious about that.
Yes, so there's a series of testing that we need to do. And I'm sorry, I stepped out for just a second, so if I'm repeating anything Dan said, forgive me on that. But the contractors there now that's doing the underground piping work, Mr. Heskett's been working closely with them. They seem to be a very highly skilled crew. There's a lot of confidence that they'll wrap this last portion of it up, and we should be a couple weeks out. So in the meantime, the paint has cured. There's a series of testing we do to ensure that it's adhered correctly, and then we'll go in and disinfect the tank and then start the process of filling it up. Likewise, staff has ordered the telemetry equipment that needs to go on there. That's kind of pre-wired or pre-stubbed for it, so our own staff will do that installation. And then the last piece will be we've already ordered and received the equipment. We have to install something called an altitude valve at the other tower at by the school complex or school campus, middle school, grade school, so that everything talks to each other, and then it'll be ready to go online. So we're hopeful in the next 3 weeks or so that we're able to fully test all of this. But from the Hills perspective, in terms of they need this for their fire suppression equipment, so we're also working with their staff to find a date that they can schedule that equipment testing, because that will be dependent on the tower being in place.
page in the report shows our 2024 budget timeline, which I won't reiterate because everyone here has heard it in detail earlier tonight, but it's outlined here. The next page is our copy of our public notice that was posted for the 2024 budget development. We'll amend the proposed budget for 2024 to reflect some of the discussions tonight and have that sort of in parallel for comparison at our September 5th regular budget meeting, public hearings, and we'll have a short staff presentation to give a recap of what's included in the proposed budget and what are the two scenarios being presented for consideration. Finally, the last 4 pages of the fiscal report are a expenditure budget report by fund and by category, so broken out by salaries and benefits, contracts, commodities, and capital outlay for most funds. And then finally, a fund balance report that shows our year-to-date fund balance status for every fund, budgeted and non-budgeted for the city. So all in all, a really good financial report. As we get closer to the end of the year, like I mentioned, we're really far along in our completion of initiatives. So as we get closer to the year end, we'll do a lot more forecasting to see if budget amendments are needed to avoid budget law violations. But we're really getting into high gear now at fine-tuning next year's estimates and preparing for that list of priorities. So happy to take any feedback you have on year-end financial reports, but that's what we're kind of looking ahead for towards the end of the year.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Great work as always. Council, do you have any questions or?
Do we know, I'm just curious about revenues from the water park. Have they been year over year?
I was hoping this month we could demonstrate that. I was actually surprised through the end of July, we had some increases in rental receipts and swimming lessons that were pretty pronounced, despite the fact rates didn't really change. So I know George and I have made a point to hope to get Darren Shoup soon to present a report to the council. We do have a few staff recommendations pending for some rate adjustments to correct a few, not mistakes, but just omissions in the last adjustment, but also look at our revenue to expenditure comparison, show that. So we can probably plug that for next month's report and get you a much more detailed answer. But we are positive in overall revenue and in a couple of those revenue categories for the water park.
So you say attendance is slightly up, slightly down?
Actually, Darren did present like a week or two ago at an ops meeting that attendance is actually down this year comparatively to last year. Not by any sort of significant margin, but we were kind of surprised to see that. The difference though was last year we had a few rainstorms. This year we had a lot of thunderstorms that had lightning embedded, and so kind of forced us to close early, or the anticipation of that storm coming in prevented folks from coming. And so, but he is tracking all that, and we'll be able to give you a much better report as we get towards the completion of the season there. But he did mention rentals are up significantly this year. I mean, literally every night we could rent the facility. It had somebody ready to go.
Thanks, George. Anything else?
No other items, Mayor. Thank you.
City Attorney agenda?
No items, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem agenda?
Nothing tonight, sorry.
City Council agenda? Anybody? And I have nothing either, which brings us to Jay.
I'll make a motion. We adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Partridge. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. See you in a couple weeks.